In today's video, I want to talk about Play Nice But Win by Michael Dell. Michael Dell is the founder and chairman of the Dell Technologies company. It was priorly known as PC Limited, and after that, the Dell Computer Company. I believe this is the second book that Michael Dell has written, the only one that I have read, though, and I liked it overall. I felt like it gave a nice broad picture over what happened at the Dell Computer Company, Dell Technologies, from basically start to where it is now. Knowing this, today I'd like to share with you 3 key takeaways that I got from the book. But before we begin, in case you were wondering where the title came from, I was wondering it too. It actually explains a little bit in depth in the book itself, but broadly speaking, it was something that Michael Dell's mom used to say to him and his brothers when they would go out to play with their friends, is play nice with the other kids, but win. And that should be your focus in being outside. But let's dive into those takeaways. My first takeaway from the book is to pursue something you love. Michael Dell was raised by educated people, hardworking people, and they desired that him and his brothers would also grow up to be hardworking, industrious, and well-educated. So, at a very young age, he was entrepreneurial, and as he graduated and moved into college, he wound up going to the University of Texas at Austin for a medical degree. However, before he even started college, Michael developed an interest in computers, and he developed 2 companies that would later become PC Limited and later Dell Technologies that were largely based out of his dorm room. The first of those 2 businesses was a sort of arbitrage business where, at the time, computer sales were kind of disjointed. Some stores would receive a lot of computers all at once, and others would have a deficit. And so he developed a business of flying to places where there was a surplus of computers, getting those, buying those up at a discount, and then renting a pickup truck, U-Haul, something of that sort, and driving them to another store in, say, another town, another state, whatever he needed to do to find somebody who was lacking in computers and who needed computers right away. The second business that he was developing during this time was building new computers for various friends of family. Whether they were lawyers or business owners, a lot of people needed computers for their businesses, and Michael had developed his knack for developing computers, taking different components and putting them together in a nice package. The second of those 2 industries would become the crux of Dell Technologies, creating made-to-order, ready-to-order computers that you could order by phone through mail. And then eventually that would transition to online orders in that sort of direct-to-consumer model. But hearkening back to the takeaway of doing something you love, it was difficult for Michael to present it to his parents at first. At first there was a lot of pushback on him entering into the computer space, but he discovered that the University of Texas at Austin had a particular program where, if you will, you could step aside for a short period of time and then come back to school and resume studies as though nothing had happened. Michael convinced them, hey, my computer business is doing so well, here's kind of the numbers, I want to do this, pursue this computer company, and then if it doesn't work out, I can return and pick up right where I left off. And he just never returned to college. And as just a quick aside, I did find it funny that he went to study medicine but wound up in business, and he developed a lot of his skills in business just by doing business. So, a little nugget there. There are plenty of opportunities to learn how to make business while doing business. My second takeaway from the book is that everyone faces criticism. Some of us face more criticism than others, but at some measure, everyone does face that at some point in their lives. And specifically in the book, Michael Dell talks a lot about the time in about 2012-2013 where he was trying to take the company from public to private. And he was doing that because at the time a lot of people were criticizing the company, saying that it was just a PC business when they were actually developing a lot more enterprise solutions. So Dell was investing heavily in building the server side of business and commercial side industries in building up servers and cloud infrastructure. But at the surface level, a lot of people just saw it as the PC company. And there was a lot of critique out there about how PCs were dying and how the PC business would eventually dry up. So the Dell stock reflected that market sentiment. People were only valuing it at about $9 to $10 a share because as a whole, people didn't really think that Dell had a large future ahead of it. But Michael Dell felt that Dell Technologies had a lot of opportunity ahead, and so that's why he wanted to take it private. Partnering with Silver Lake Capital, he came up with a proposal, worked it with the board, and when it was finally released to the public, that's when things really started to face criticism. Around the time, there was an investor named Carl Icahn. He was an activist investor, or as Michael Dell put, a corporate raider, famous for buying up large shares of different companies, stirring up a bit of a ruckus, and then coming out the other side making a profit off of it. Many people viewed Carl Icahn as an activist investor because they thought that his actions led to higher share prices when those shares were bought back by a company or purchased in the case of Dell taking the company private. Michael Dell, on the other hand, thought that Carl Icahn was a bit of a rebel-rouser. He was really just there to stir up trouble and make more money for himself, was Michael Dell's perspective. So when Michael Dell had this proposal out with Silver Lake Partners, they were open to other deals. The board was open to taking other deals as far as investments and buying up shares. Michael Dell was content to secede his position so long as another better proposition was placed before the board. And Carl Icahn and the Southeastern Company drummed up a lot of energy and a lot of tension in the media, saying that they had a team, that they would be able to replace Dell and all of the other partners and come up with a better plan that would lead to Dell's success in the future. After a lot of negative press, a lot of angry letters by Carl Icahn, and a few months of time, it wound up being that it was a bunch of hot air. Carl didn't really have a plan that he was able to propose to the board, and the board wound up taking Michael Dell and Silver Lake Partners' deal. At the end of all that, the whole rebel-rousing was able to generate a better share purchase price for all of the shareholders. And Carl Icahn walked away saying, "I helped everyone get a better share price," and promptly sold all of his shares. Just a few short years later, after the Dell Computer Company had merged with EMC and thereby acquired a large stake in VMware, there was a bit of restructuring that they were trying to do as a private company. And in order to really make it more simplified, they had proposed these offerings on the public market. Carl Icahn returned. There was more of this rebel-rousing, more prices rise, and the same exit that Carl had done before, which is, I got the share price higher. They should have been able to raise the price even higher than it was, but that's all that we can do. Then promptly sold his shares. What I learned in all this is that Michael Dell faced a lot of criticism, and he was open to the criticism that would help the company. But the criticism that was just there to degrade and to diminish who he was as a person and who the company was as a person was thrown out the window. And that's the way I feel like we can treat our own criticisms, the way that we receive criticisms from others. If you receive criticism in life or in business, ask if this is something that's going to help you become better. Is this something that's going to improve your business or your life? Or is it just something meant to beat you up and make you feel sad about yourself? And if it's the latter, go ahead and get rid of it. My third and final takeaway that I'd like to share with you today is to build a company that inspires people. If you are in a place that you'd like to start a business, or you're currently running a business yourself, there is an opportunity to go above and beyond just making something that provides for people. People as a whole have a hierarchy of needs, if you will. Some people have developed different ideas around that. But essentially, at a base level, everyone needs food, water, and shelter, and clothing as sort of their baseline needs. And if your job at your company provides those needs, then at a baseline, you've provided the base of what people need in life. But above that can be things like fun things to do at your company. And above that, even more, can be things like a purpose and some sort of inspirational thing that people are pursuing as they work their jobs. Providing a job and a role where people can provide for themselves and for the family is admirable. But to really make a company stand out, to go above and beyond these things, is really what people should be striving towards, is the impression that I got from Dell. I think the crux of this perspective is rooted in the fact that Michael Dell grew up alongside other entrepreneurs in the computer space. At the same time, in the 80s and 90s that he was building his company, Steve Jobs and Bill Gates were building Microsoft and Apple. For this first 10, 20 years, business was really booming. From those times working out of his dorm room and fulfilling orders that way, stuffing plenty of product in his and his roommates' space, to getting an apartment of his own and eventually a warehouse and a factory. Throughout all of those little iterations at the beginning, there was a lot of growth and a lot of opportunity. But then the dot-com bubble hit. It went from being a place and a company where everybody was excited about the work and ready to go to a place where not everybody's jobs were secured. And that brought a little bit of insecurity into the company and started to mess with people's perspective. As the years passed and they eventually got to the 2012, 2013 era, they were researching among the company to see how people's sentiment was towards the company. And a lot of people felt, about 50 or so % of the people in the company felt that if they were paid equally, they would be just as happy working at another company. And that really got to Michael. It really made him reconsider what it meant to have a company that inspired people to work there. A lot of people were worried because in the past, people had lost their jobs. And that led to some uncertainty as far as whether people would be able to keep their jobs in the current market cycle. In response, when Michael Dell took the company private and later was seeking to merge Dell Computer Company with EMC, he sought to have an amicable merge, and not only that, he sought to meet and message as many people from EMC as he could. That way, as many people as possible who were integrating into the company that would become Dell Technologies felt welcome and felt like they had some opportunity to keep going. And with the merger, there were some tough calls. There were more than enough people to fill all of the jobs in the company, and some people had to be let go. And some of those people received nice severance packages. But all this got me thinking how often it happens in business that people get laid off either through a merger or acquisition, and how that deeply affects all the employees who receive that. There's a handful of people who can weather any economic storm and are completely fine. But for a lot of people, their job is their livelihood. It allows them to provide for their families and for themselves. As a business owner, if you're letting go of someone because of something that your company is doing, not because of something that the employee is doing, but because of, say, a merger and acquisition, or say you're trying to compress some component of the business, then to some measure you can just let people go, but it means that much more to go above and beyond and set people up for their next opportunity, to send them off in the best way possible. I think this not only sends a positive message to anyone who might seek employment from your company down the road, but it also lets the people that are working at your company know that you have their back if for some reason their job also needs to be terminated at some point. So if you do for some reason find yourself in a position where you are running a large enterprise or even a small enterprise, I'd encourage you to help your employees out. It'll help build up your culture. While most of us may not have the opportunity to apply this last takeaway, I do think it was still a pretty good takeaway. And I enjoyed the book. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe down below, and I will see you in the next video.